Hello, this is day 41 of reading one canto of the Divine Comedy every day. We are on Purgatorio, Canto 7, which I will read from the Longfellow translation before giving some quick comments. After the gracious and glad salutations had 3 and 4 times been reiterated, Sordello backward drew and said, "Who are you?" Or ever to this mountain were directed the souls deserving to ascend to God, my bones were buried by Octavian. I am Virgilius, and for no crime else did I lose heaven than for not having faith. In this wise then my leader made reply. As one who suddenly before him sees something whereat he marvels, who believes and yet does not, saying, it is not. So he appeared, and then bowed down his brow, and with humility returned towards him, and where inferiors embrace, embraced him. O glory of the Latians, thou, he said, through whom our language showed what it could do, O pride eternal of the place I came from, what merit or what grace to me reveals thee? If I to hear thy words be worthy, tell me if thou dost come from hell, and from what cloister? Through all the circles of the doleful realm, responded he, have I come hitherward. Heaven's power impelled me, and with that I come. I by not doing, not by doing, lost the sight of that high sun which thou desirest, and which too late by me was recognized. A place there is below, not sad with torments, but darkness only, where the lamentations have not the sound of wailing, but are sighs. There dwell I with the little innocents snatched by the teeth of death, or ever they were from our human sinfulness exempt. There dwell I among those who the 3 saintly virtues did not put on, and without vice the others knew, and followed all of them. But if thou know and can, some indication give us by which we may the sooner come, where purgatory has its right beginning. He answered, no fixed place has been assigned us. 'Tis lawful for me to go up and round, so far as I can go, as guide I join thee. But see already how the day declines, and to go up by night we are not able. Therefore 'tis well to think of some fair sojourn. Souls are there on the right hand here withdrawn. If thou permit me, I will lead thee to them, and thou shalt know them not without delight. How is this? Was the answer. Should one wish to mount by night, would he prevented be by others? Or mayhap would not have power? And on the ground the good Sordello drew his finger, saying, see, this line alone thou couldst not pass after the sun is gone. Not that aught else would hindrance give, however, to going up, save the nocturnal darkness. This with the want of power the will perplexes. We might indeed therewith return below, and, wandering, walk the hillside round about, while the horizon holds the day imprisoned. Thereon my lord, as if in wonder, said, do thou conduct us thither, where thou sayest that we can take delight in tarrying. Little had we withdrawn us from that place, when I perceived the mount was hollowed out in fashion as the valleys here are hollowed. Thitherward, said that shade, will we repair, where of itself the hillside makes a lap, and there for the new day will we await. Twixt hill and plain there was a winding path, which led us to the margin of that dell, where dies the border more than half away. Gold and fine silver, and scarlet and pearl white, the Indian wood resplendent and serene, fresh emerald the moment it is broken. By herbage and by flowers within that hollow planted, each one in color would be vanquished, as by its greater vanquished is the less. Nor in that place had nature painted only, but of the sweetness of 1,000 odors, made there a mingled fragrance and unknown. Salve Regina! On the green and flowers there seated, singing, spirits I beheld, which were not visible outside the valley. Before the scanty sun now seeks his nest, began the Mantuan who had led us thither. Among them do not wish me to conduct you. Better from off this ledge the acts and faces of all of them will you discriminate, than in the plain below received among them. He who sits highest and the semblance bears of having what he should have done neglected, and to the others song moves not his lips, Rudolph the emperor was, who had the power to heal the wounds that Italy hath slain, so that through others slowly she revives. The other, who in look doth comfort him, governed the region where the water springs, the Moldau bears the Elbe, and Elbe the sea. His name was Ottokar, and in swaddling clothes, far better he than bearded Wenceslas, his son, who feeds in luxury and ease. And the small-nosed, who close in counsel seems with him that has an aspect so benign, died fleeing and disflowering the lily. Look there, how he is beating at his breast. Behold the other one, who for his cheek, sighing, has made of his own palm a bed. Father and father-in-law of France's pest are they, and know his vicious life and lewd, and hence proceeds the grief that so doth pierce them. He who appears so stalwart, and chimes in, singing, with that one of the manly nose, the cord of every valor war begirt, and if, as king, had after him remained, the stripling who in rear of him is sitting, well had the valor passed from vase to vase. Which cannot of the other heirs be said. Frederick and Giacomo possess the realms, but none the better heritage possesses. Not oftentimes upriseth through the branches the probity of man, and this he wills who gives it, so that we may ask of him. Eke to the large-nosed reach my words, no less than to the other, Pierre, who with him sings, whence Provence and Apulia grieve already the plant is as inferior to its seed, as more than Beatrice and Margaret Costanza boasteth of her husband still. Behold the monarch of the simple life, Harry of England, sitting there alone. He in his branches has a better issue. He who the lowest on the ground among them sits looking upward is the Marquis William, for whose sake Alessandria and her war make Montferrat and Canaves weep. So at the end of the previous canto, Virgil and Dante had met a soul named Sordello, who is also from Mantua, and he embraces Virgil, and they get to talking. Now in this canto, he asks him, "Who are you? Which Mantuan are you?" And he shares that he in fact is Virgil, who, he says, by no other fault than lack of faith did I, miss out on heaven, on salvation. Now, on the one hand, that was a very common notion in medieval theology and philosophy. There's tons of examples where the Song of Roland comes to mind, actually, where their adversaries, the Saracens, sometimes they're actually described with great nobility and as, really, really good people, and like they follow the virtues and everything, and yet, for this one fault alone, no faith, they're damned forever. That was a very common notion in the Middle Ages. And yet, and of course Dante echoes it here by putting these words in Virgil's mouth, and yet, you guys know, I think that the actual reason that Virgil is not in heaven, within the comedy, is evident as we go through. Number one, in Limbo, he says that, nobody here has committed any sins, which we know is not true. Through fallen human nature, everybody sins. And so, if he believes he has no sin, then when he heard the preaching of Christ, who descended into hell on Holy Saturday, he wouldn't have thought he would have had any need for a savior, right? So, and as we know, some souls actually did follow Christ at that point. Cato, who we saw at the beginning of Purgatorio, did follow him, even though his wife did not. So it definitely was possible, I think, for Virgil to get out of there, but he chose not to. And there's another instance that makes this even more tragic, but that is coming much later. Another medieval convention, speaking of those, is the use of the sun to symbolize God's grace. Sordello explains that nobody can continue to climb the mountain of purgatory during the night. You can only progress during the day. That's symbolic for relying on God's grace, which makes sense. As we know from the other souls in purgatory, they cannot really help themselves here. They're reliant on others to pray for them. They progress only so far as they can during the day, and then during the night, they wait in hope. The other thing I notice about this canto is that there's tons of monarchs and tons of rulers that Dante points out, that he knows, that he names, or just refers to. What is up with that? Especially since there were so few of them in hell. I mean, there were a few, but there's like every single person in this canto that's pointed out is a king or a nobleman or some sort of ruler. Why is that? Well, on the one hand, we know that Dante is somewhat partial to high authorities on Earth. He desires such authority to stabilize his own homeland. And on the other hand, he hasn't put them all in heaven. He's put them not even in purgatory, but anti-purgatory, waiting to get in. And so he recognizes that for all their good intentions, that perhaps they made a lot of mistakes or were late repentant and did not follow God their whole life, but only turned to him at the end. So it might be something of a rebuke at the same time. And then on the other hand, no matter what you think he means by it, it demonstrates his mastery of the knowledge of history. He's got emperors and dukes and kings from Italy, from Germany, from France, from England. He knows them all, and they're all here. So that's the main thing to take away, that you can know for sure, that Dante knows his history from multiple nations over many centuries. He's a very well-educated man, and he shows that throughout the Inferno and the Purgatorio and Paradiso, but we can see an example of it here. That's all for today. I'll see you tomorrow.